Well, I've just started to set the windowsill, but before I go any further, let's go back a little bit to the knee wall, which I've already finished. Now, it's a simple matter of just cutting the tiles to fit and then thin setting them in place. Now up here in the corners, I've used what's known as a down angle or an out corner, which has the curve feature on two sides of the tile. Now, as you can see, I've put a little miter here and spliced two pieces of tile together. The main reason for that is that the tile below plus the tile on the face is larger than this 4 1/4 tile. Now, I always look for areas where I can add little detailing like this, but there is an alternative, and that is to get a down angle that is used with a piece of 6x6 surface, and that can be cut down so that this can be just one piece rather than two. Now, you'll notice here that the grout line extends right down through the middle of this. This is a focal point of the knee wall, and I wanted to make sure that the tiles on either side were balanced. Now, if we follow this grout joint back to the wall, you can see that it doesn't line up, and there's a reason for that. You remember in the beginning of the tape, we mentioned about a glass partition here for the enclosure. Normally, that glass partition would be wide enough to cover this amount of offset, and it's more important to center the joint out in front rather than follow the joint that runs with the rest of the wall. And back here in our cove section, to fit in these pieces of surface trim, it's simply a matter of radiating out the joints from these cuts on the face and then gradually nibbling the tiles down until they fit the space. That way the top of the knee wall appears to run right into the top of the windowsill here and gives it a nice pleasing transition. Now, over on the windowsill, if you can remember, I only partially floated the sill and the jambs and the header. I didn't float it out to the finished size. It's a lot easier if I use a little sandwich with thinset and grout to get the tiles positioned. Now in this bucket here we have the same kind of thinset we've been using for the walls, and first thing I do is put a thin coat on the back of the tile. Now in this bucket I have some white sanded grout, and you can see that its consistency is quite a bit different than the thinset. It has more bulk and it stands up a lot easier than the thinset. Now what I do is pile a big glob of grout up on top of the tile. Now the first thing you want to do is position the front of the tile on the little spacers and then just wiggle it into place. And this same process gets repeated all the way around. The first step is to smear the dried mortar bed with thinset so the grout will stick. Then I pack the voids with grout. The wire helps to lock the grout to the mortar bed. A layer of thinset on the tile forms the other side of the sandwich with grout in the middle. I've trimmed the lower portion of this tile to conform to the slope of the sill tiles, an important part in a wet installation like this. The one thing that makes this process work is that the thinset has to be wet before I put the tile in place. And when I'm working on a header, I want to make absolutely sure it's still wet. So I give it a second swipe of thinset with the sponge. That way the tile won't come falling down on me. Now you can see I've already scribed this tile out. On the bottom, towards the sill, I scribe the side tiles so they'll overlap the tiles on the sill and provide a watershed. Up here I do it on the header because there's not that watershed problem. Now all I have to do is pull the spacers out, wash the window up a little bit, and then set the radius tile around the perimeter, and this job will be ready to grout.